Hey friends, welcome back to College Sports Corner. I'm Barry. Well, sadly, we've made it to the last Saturday in college football. Yeah, it's championship weekend. We're gonna have some good games, but overall, it's kind of sad. It kind of reminds me of the old week zero, as they call it. You got 6, 7 games, and then that's it. It's not like a full Saturday when we can flip around between 12 and 15 different channels, check on different games. That's not going to happen again, sadly, until next September. But like I said, we got some good championship games coming up, some good matchups. That'll be pretty exciting. We even have a one late game we'll talk about. Anyway, hey, if you like the show, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, hit that little subscribe button. We'll get started with some news. We'll start off first, in case you missed it. College football rankings came out last night, the playoff rankings. 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, 3 Alabama, 4 Cincinnati, 5 Oklahoma State, 6 Notre Dame, 7 Ohio State, 8 Ole Miss, 9 Baylor, 10 Oregon, 11 Michigan State, 12 BYU, 13 Iowa, 14 OU, and 15 Pitt. That's going to be changing probably by Saturday night. And for all of you that want the expanded playoff and want to see chaos like I do, we might even have some upsets to really, really screw up those ratings and let that CFP really figure out what they're going to do. Every year I root for chaos just because I want to see an expanded playoff. So you never know. We'll see what happens. All right, let's get started with some news. We got a lot of big stuff to cover here from these last few days. Everybody's heard about all the coaching changes. Lincoln Riley to USC. Why did he go? I don't know. I would think it's probably money, unless there was something behind the scenes we don't know about. Maybe he was upset with boosters or alumni or administration, the way things were going there. Because I really don't see why you would leave a program that you're having a lot of success at. And even though you're going to a new conference, a lot of people said he's scared of the SEC. I don't think so. Anytime you're leaving a good program for another program that's really not as good as yours, it's got to be money or something behind the scenes. I don't think he just said, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to go out here to California and see what I can do. Yeah, I think it's money or something behind the scenes we don't know about. Anyway, he's off to USC. I guess Oklahoma's still figuring out what they're going to do. Bob Stoops is going to come back, and I think he's going to coach the bowl game. I think he's even done some recruiting, too, if I read right. Anyway, that's one of the big ones. Billy Napier from Louisiana Lafayette going to Florida. He was a Saban disciple. He had some success there at Louisiana Lafayette, and now he's going to go try it at Florida. See what happens there. Good luck to him. Another big one, Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame to go to LSU. He got a big contract, is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in college football. So that makes you think, money, was he... I know Notre Dame's got high academic standards, so maybe he wasn't getting the players he wanted that could push him in to win a national championship. I don't know. But with that big contract he's getting from LSU, you wonder if maybe it was money. Anyway, he's going to LSU. We'll see how he does there. Defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman is evidently taking over the team, and he's going to be hired as the head coach. And from what I've read, all the players, or most of the players, went to Notre Dame administration and said, hey, hire this guy. He is great. So evidently the school listened to the players, and he's going to be the new head coach there at Notre Dame. Good luck to him. Wouldn't that be something if they got into the playoff and won that? That'd be awesome for them. Kalen DeBoer from Fresno State is going to Washington. He will be the Huskies' new coach. He's going to try to turn that program around and get it back to national prominence like it used to be years ago. Did a pretty good job at Fresno State. Not too bad there, so I think he'll probably work out pretty good in Washington. Penn State defensive coordinator Brent Ray is Virginia Tech's new coach. He's going to go down there and try to straighten out the mess down there and get the Hokies back on the winning ways. See how he does. Boston College coach Jeff Hafley, 5-year contract extension. I guess they like what he's doing there. Minnesota OC Mike Stanford, he's been fired. He's out. I guess they didn't like what he was doing there. Mike Bobo, offensive coordinator Auburn, he's gone too. So, these coaches fire these assistant coaches first before they get the axe. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year and if any of these coaches get the axe. Which I don't think why PJ Fleck's done a good job in Minnesota. So I don't see him being on the hot seat come next September when all the football news comes out. And they Auburn, they just hired their coach, so I don't know. Hey, New Hampshire Wildcats head coach Sean McDonald is retiring after 23 years as head coach in New Hampshire. He has 157 wins there. I guess it's time he wants to spend time with the family. Finally coaching career over. So good luck to you. Enjoy your retirement, coach. Thanks for all you've done for college football. Kentucky and Mark Stoops, they agreed to a contract extension. They like what he's doing there. Evidently, I mean, they beat some teams this year, Florida and others. So congratulations to Mark Stoops. And this one I just saw this morning. Nebraska quarterback Adrian Martinez has entered the transfer portal. This comes pretty soon after Trev Alberts, the AD there, gave Scott Frost another year. Don't know if that's why. Maybe he's unhappy or with other things, or he doesn't think it's going to get turned around. He just wants to play on a winning team his last year or two. So anyway, as of this morning, he is in the transfer portal now. So, and that's the news we got today. All right, championship weekend starts Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network. You got Western Kentucky 8-4 at UTSA 11-1, and they're actually playing this on UTA's home turf in the Alamo Dome. Conference USA Championship game. Western Kentucky averages 102 rushing yards, 423 passing yards, and 525 total yards. And their quarterback, Billy Zate, I'm real high on this guy. He's here from Texas. This is an incredible guy, but he's not getting talked about for the Heisman. My guess because he's 8-4 and on Western Kentucky, which is stupid, but 4,968 passing yards, 52 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. Wide receiver Jarrett Stearns, 1,539 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. On the other hand here, UTSA, 179 rushing yards a game, 255 passing yards, 438 total yards on the year. Quarterback Frank Harris, 2,688 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's rushed for 5 touchdowns also. Their leading running back, Sincere McCormick, has 1,275 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns. And their leading receiver, Zachary Franklin, 871 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns on the season. And these two teams played earlier in the year, and UTSA won 57-46, pretty close. All right, Pac-12 championship game, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Oregon 10-2 at Utah 9-3. I actually thought Arizona State was going to be in this Pac-12 championship game back in September and October. No, I was wrong. Oregon is averaging 215 rushing yards a game, 220 passing yards, and 436 total yards. The quarterback, Anthony Brown, 2,536 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 9 rushing touchdowns on the year. The running back, Travis Dye, 1,036 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. And wide receiver, Devin Williams, 540 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Utah is averaging 218 rushing yards a game, 216 passing yards, and 424 total yards. Their quarterback, Cameron Rising, 2,109 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 5 rushing touchdowns on the year. Running back, Tavion Thomas, 978 rushing yards, and 18 touchdowns on the year. Wide receiver, Brent Kuthi, 522 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, and their tight end, Dalton Kincaid, has 6 touchdown catches. Utah won this game back in November, 38-7. There's a primetime game. I think we all, or most of us, probably saw it. Anyway, that's it for that. Okay, Saturday. Here we go. Both Game Day and SEC Nation are going to be in the SEC Championship game for Alabama and Georgia. Big Ten Tailgate will be at the Big Ten Championship game. And I did not find anything on Fox Big Noon Kickoff, if they're even going to go anywhere. I'm not sure. I didn't see anything, but it may be out there. All right, 12 Eastern, ABC, Big 12 Championship game. Baylor 10-2, Oklahoma State 11-1. This is a rematch from back in October, I believe. where Oklahoma State won 24-14. Baylor's averaging 225 rushing yards, 221 passing yards, and 446 total yards a game. Jerry Bohannon, their quarterback, 2,192 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 9 rushing touchdowns on the year. Running back Abram Smith, 1,334 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns. Wide receiver Taquan Thornton, 875 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns on the year. And their tight end Ben Sims has 5 touchdowns. Oklahoma State averages 191 rushing yards, 218 passing yards, 408 total yards on the year. Quarterback Spencer Sanders, 2,211 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he's got 6 rushing touchdowns. Running back Jaylen Warren, 1,134 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. Wide receiver Tay Martin, 858 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. And wide receiver Brennan Presley has 5 touchdown catches for the Cowboys. 12 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, the MAC championship game. Kent State 7-5, Northern Illinois 8-4. These two teams met back in November. Kent State won 52-47, another close one. Kent State averages 247 rushing yards, 243 passing yards, 490 total yards. The quarterback Dustin Crum, 2,813 yards, 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 11 rushing touchdowns for him. Running back Marquise Cooper, 1,075 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, and wide receiver Dante Cephas, 1,022 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. For Northern Illinois, they averaged 232 rushing yards, 193 passing yards, and 424 total yards. Their quarterback Rocky Lombardi, 2,286 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 5 rushing touchdowns for him. Running back Jay Ducker, 892 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Trayvon Rudolph, 827 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns for him. Oh, let's see. Mountain West Championship game will be at 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Maybe that's where the big new kickoff is going to be. I don't know. Utah State 9-3. San Diego State 11-1. They did not play in the regular season. Utah State's averaging 153 rushing yards, 204 passing yards, 457 total yards. Logan Bonner, the quarterback, 3,236 yards, 32 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Running back Calvin Tile Jr., 723 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. And wide receiver Davon Tompkins, 1,543 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. And another wide receiver of theirs, Derek Wright, has 10 touchdowns on the year. San Diego State, 177 rushing yards, 158 passing yards, 335 total yards. Their quarterback, Lucas Johnson, 1,091 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Running back Greg Bell, 947 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jesse Matthews, 400 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, when you look at all these stats for San Diego State University, you sit there and say, how are they 11-1? They've got low stats and everything compared to a lot of people in this country, but they're still 11-1 somehow. And you just look at that and you're like, okay. Sun Belt Conference Championship game, 3:30 Eastern on ESPN. Appalachian State 10-2. Louisiana 11-1. Louisiana won this game earlier, 41-13. I believe that was a Thursday night game too, a few weeks ago. Appalachian State's averaging 189 rushing yards, 251 passing yards, 440 total yards. The quarterback Chase Bryce, 2,903 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. The running back Nate Noel, 1,032 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, and another running back of theirs, Cameron Peoples, has 764 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. Wide receiver Corey Sutton, 876 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. They got another wide receiver, Malik Williams, 776 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. For Louisiana, they average 192 rushing yards, 214 passing yards, 407 total yards. Their quarterback Levi Lewis has 2,437 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 4 rushing touchdowns. Running back Chris Smith, 834 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. Wide receiver Pete LeBlanc, 350 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. And their wide receiver Kayvan Lacey, 295 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. All right, the big one here everybody's talking about, the SEC Championship game, 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Georgia 12-0 versus Alabama 11-1. Georgia averaging 202 rushing yards, 240 passing yards, 442 total yards. Stetson Bennett for quarterback, 1,985 yards, 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Running back Zamir White, 691 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns. James Cook has 581 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. And wide receiver Brock Bowers, 652 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. Alabama's averaging 150 rushing yards, 342 passing yards, 492 total yards a game. Bryce Young has 3,901 passing yards, 40 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Running back Brian Robinson Jr., 1,016 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns. And wide receiver Jameson Williams, 1,261 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns. Not too bad for him. And John Mechie, 1,045 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. AAC Championship game. A lot of people are going to be watching this one too, 4 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Houston 11-1 at Cincinnati 12-0. Houston's averaging 149 rushing yards, 292 passing yards, 422 total yards a game. Quarterback Clayton Tune, 3,013 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Running back Alton McCaskill, 844 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns. And Tayshawn Henry has 492 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Wide receiver Nathaniel Dell, 1,027 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. And Jeremy Singleton, 470 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. Cincinnati averages 177 rushing yards, 254 passing yards, 431 total yards. The quarterback Desmond Ridder, 3,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's also rushed for 342 yards and 6 touchdowns on this year. Running back Jerome Ford, 1,051 yards, 17 touchdowns. Not too bad. Wide receiver Alex Pierce, 802 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. And the tight end Josh Weiler has 6 touchdowns. Looking at these two guys, Houston, Cincinnati, and their quarterbacks, there's a lot of damn good quarterbacks in college football this year. And here comes some other ones here. ACC Championship game, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Pittsburgh 10-2 versus Wake Forest 10-2. Pitt's averaging 156 rushing yards, 257 passing yards, 513 total yards a game. Kenny Pickett, 4,066 yards, 40 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and he's also rushed for 4 touchdowns. Running back Israel Abri-Cardo, I think that's how you say it, 580 yards, 5 touchdowns. And Ray Hammond Jr., 470 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver Jordan Addison, 1,353 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns. Pretty good year for him. And tight end Lucas Krull has 6 touchdowns. Wake Forest averages 168 rushing yards, 316 passing yards, 484 total yards. Sam Hartman, 3,705 yards, 34 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He's also rushed for 343 yards and 10 touchdowns. So, running back Christian Beal Smith, 557 yards, 7 touchdowns. Justice Ellison, 477 yards and 6 touchdowns. And wide receiver A.T. Perry, 1,112 yards, 13 touchdowns. And Jaquil Robertson, 1,024 yards and 8 touchdowns. So, Wake Forest has got a pair of pretty good receivers there that Hartman can throw to. All right, 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Big Ten championship game. Michigan 11-1. Iowa 10-2. Michigan averages 225 rushing yards, 226 passing yards, 451 total yards. Quarterback Cade McNamara, 2,301 yards, 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Running back Hassan Hoskins, 1,233 yards, 18 touchdowns. Blake Corum, 865 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns. And wide receiver Cornelius Johnson, 594 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Iowa averaging 121 rushing yards, 178 passing yards, 300 total yards. Quarterback Spencer Petras, 1,532 yards and 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 5 rushing touchdowns. Running back Tyler Goodson, 1,101 yards, 6 touchdowns. And wide receiver Sam Laporta, 486 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that wraps up your championship games. Now the late game I was telling you about is a makeup game. 11 p.m. Eastern on FS1. We got a late game. Not Hawaii this time, but hey. USC 4-7. California 4-7. USC averages 144 rushing yards, 300 passing yards, 444 total yards. California averages 172 rushing yards, 226 passing yards, 397 total yards. I think this game is the one that California had to cancel because they had a COVID outbreak, even though like 99% of the team was vaccinated. I don't know. Anyway, if you're not a USC or Cal fan, you're asking, why the hell would I watch that? Well, for one, it's the last late game of the year we can stay up late drinking beer watching college football until next September. But we can make fun of this. This can be a fun game for us, too. You know, Lincoln Riley's at USC now. You know he's going to be at the game. And we know how the media likes to show people all the time. You know, like championship game and Super Bowl, they always show the celebrity in the crowd. Oh, let's see what their reaction is. They're loving this. Yeah. Well, every time, who is it, FS1? Every time they show Lincoln Riley, because you know they're going to show him a bunch after probably after big plays and after scoring. Every time they show Lincoln Riley, slam a beer. Or slam your glass of whiskey, slam your glass of wine, whatever you like. And see how much fun this can be. Because we know, like I said, we know how the media likes to show people. If we play this game, you guys are probably going to have to buy a case of beer, a few bottles of wine, a few bottles of whiskey, because you know they're going to be showing him every chance they get what his reaction is to a play or whatever. So see, even though these two teams aren't very good, we can still stay up late watching college football, drinking, and having fun. So play that little game. It'll be fun. And like I said, it's the last late game of the year, so why not, huh? All right, so basketball. We have a few upsets. Tuesday night, Ohio State beat number 1 Duke, 71-66. Forward ZK led the way with 20 points for Ohio State. Center E.J. Little had 14 points, and Cedric Russell had 12 points. For Duke, forward Wendell Moore Jr., he had 17 points. Guard Paolo Bacharo had 14 points. And forward Trevor Keels and guard Jeremy Roach each had 9 points for Duke. Last night, Wednesday night, Oklahoma beat number 14 Florida, 74-67. Leader for Oklahoma, forward Tanner Groves had 20 points for Oklahoma. Florida's guard Philandris Fleming had 17 points. North Carolina beat number 24 Michigan, 72 to, and I didn't write down Michigan's score, but they lost, trust me. Guard Caleb Love from North Carolina had 22 points. Forward Mosa Diabate for Michigan had 13 points. Georgia beat number 18 Memphis, 82-79. Guard Cario Oquendo, I think that's how you say it. He had 24 points. He led Georgia. Landers Nolly for Memphis, guard, had 17 points. He led the way for them. This one went in overtime. Utah Valley 72, number 12 BYU 65. For Utah Valley, center Faradis Mark, 24 points. Guard Alex Porcillo, 17 points for BYU. He was their leader. And tonight you did have a top 25 game. Washington at number 11 Arizona. it got postponed because of some kind of COVID crap. And, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick of this and all this new variant crap, man. To hell with all that crap. I'm done with it. Okay, so that's it, man. It is Thursday. You got one more day until the weekend gets here. Thank God. This has probably been a long week after the great holiday week we had last week. But hey, we're almost there. Finish out this day. One more day. Anyway, you guys enjoy the last Saturday of college football. In the bowl season, we'll get 1 or 2 Saturdays where you got 3, 4, 5, 6 bowl games. But this is it. Sad time till next September. But hey, we got basketball. We've already had some upsets this year, so basketball season looking like it's going to be pretty good. That'll get us over. Baseball and softball start here in a few months. That'll get us through. Spring football will be here before you know it. So enjoy this last Saturday of college football, guys. We will be back next. May do a Sunday show because I know they're going to be picking bowls and all that and tell us who's going to be in the playoff. May do a Sunday show. If not, it'll be Monday to recap everything that's going on. Anyway, hey, you guys have a great day. Have a great tomorrow. Enjoy your weekend. And we'll see you on the next show.